The sun hung low and merciless in the sky, casting long, wavering shadows over the cracked earth of the borderlands. This was where the desert met the last breath of grass, where life clung to the edge. Stubborn and silent, the wind offered no comfort, only the dry rasp of dust across brittle rocks and thorn bushes. Dr. Emilio wiped the sweat from his brow with a trembling hand. He had been walking for hours, tracing faint tracks through the sand, tracks that told a story of pain. They had started as deep, bold impressions, but the farther he followed them, the more erratic they became, drifting, staggering, limping. Now, as the heat began to bleed orange into the afternoon sky, he saw the shape curled beneath a withered acacia. At first, he mistook it for a mound of fur and dried blood. But then the shape breathed. Slowly, shallowly, the wind shifted, and the scent hit him, iron and dust, sweat and pride. A lion. The lion's body was massive, but wrong somehow, too still. One foreleg was bent at an unnatural angle, torn and swollen, caked with blood and sand. The great mane was matted with dirt, and flies clung to his flank. Yet his eyes, those eyes, remained open, watching, unblinking. They locked onto Emilio the moment he approached. The man stopped a few paces away, boots crunching softly in the sand. He had seen lions before. Too many, and never like this. Most were ghosts in the distance. Others came in wounded, snarling, caught in wires or steel. Some could be saved, others not. But this one, he was different. There was no panic in his gaze, no frenzy, just fire, old and smoldering, the look of a king who had been brought low, but not broken, the look of something ancient and wounded by the world. Emilio slowly lowered his satchel. He didn't speak, he didn't reach, he simply sat down. The lion did not move. Minutes passed, then more. The sky deepened, the wind shifted again. The silence between them stretched, thick and unspoken. For Emilio, it was like facing a memory, of loss, of rage, of guilt. He had once believed all predators were monsters. After what happened, his son, gone in a flash of claws and screaming hooves on a hunt that had never been his idea. He had cursed every fang in the wild, hated what he could not tame. But hatred had burned him hollow. And in that emptiness, healing had begun, not for himself, but for the ones who had no choice in the violence thrust upon them. Now, across from him, lay another creature shaped by pain. The lion's leg twitched. A faint sound escaped his throat, not a growl, not a cry, something low, guttural, the edge of survival. Emilio exhaled and moved, carefully, with the tenderness of someone unlearning fear. He opened his bag. He pulled out water first, uncapped it, and poured a slow stream into a dented metal dish. Then he slid it forward, the metal scraping softly over stone. The lion's ear flicked. Then, slowly, impossibly slowly, he lifted his head. It took effort, a tremor passing through his entire frame. His tongue, dark and cracked, swept out and lapped at the water. Emilio watched without speaking. Not a doctor now, not a man with a past. Just another broken thing beside another. The lion drank until the dish was dry. He did not thank the man. He did not beg. But when Emilio reached forward again, holding a syringe, he did not bite. It took time. The sedative worked gently, enough to let Emilio clean the wound. A snare. By the look of it, steel wire embedded deep around the ankle, nearly severing the limb. Infection had already set in, but not past the point of hope. He cleaned it, treated it, wrapped it with care and purpose. All the while, the lion lay still. When Emilio was done, the sun had begun to vanish behind the distant dunes. The sky turned crimson. The first stars blinked awake. Emilio leaned back, hands blood-stained but steady. The lion slept now, not deeply, but enough. Emilio studied him again. There were marks across his body, old scars. A face lined with age. But not weakness. This was no random animal. This was a leader, or had been. "What brought you here?" Emilio whispered. Of course. There was no answer, but he asked anyway, because in that moment, he felt something binding them. Not forgiveness, not understanding, just the simple truth of pain meeting pain, and refusing to lash out. Emilio didn't return to his home that night. He stayed by the lion's side, lighting a small fire against the chill that crept across the desert floor. He dozed in short bursts, always waking to check the lion's breathing. The steady rise and fall brought a strange peace. In the darkest hour before dawn, the lion stirred. Emilio awoke instantly. They met eyes again. This time, the fire was dimmer, but not gone. The lion did not snarl, did not retreat. He only watched. Emilio nodded once. "I'll call you Leon," he said, voice raw, "because whatever you were before, you still carry it." Leon did not respond, but he did not look away. As the sun rose again, gentle and slow, two creatures remained beneath the acacia, neither whole, neither unchanged, but together, for now, in the silence that said more than any word ever could. The sun was beginning to dip behind the jagged outline of distant hills when Dr. Emilio guided the old truck onto the gravel path that led to his recovery compound. The tires kicked up dust that shimmered gold in the dying light. In the back, cushioned by old blankets and surrounded by silence, lay Leon, his breathing shallow, but steady. He had not moved much during the ride. He didn't thrash, didn't growl, didn't try to escape. He simply watched. Emilio knew that kind of stillness. It wasn't trust. It was wariness layered over exhaustion. When they arrived, Emilio opened the rear gate of the truck slowly, deliberately. He didn't use tools or chains. Didn't call for help, just a soft voice and careful hands. It took nearly an hour to coax Leon out of the truck and into the large recovery enclosure, a reinforced pen open to the breeze. Shaded by old canvas and a fig tree that had survived more than its share of seasons. Leon entered it without protest. His powerful limbs, though bandaged and aching, carried him with slow dignity. He lay down near the back wall, far from the bowl of water and untouched meat that Emilio had set near the gate. And he did not move again for hours. Emilio sat just outside the enclosure, back to the wall, book in hand. He said nothing, made no sounds beyond the turning of pages and the occasional rustle of his coat. Leon didn't sleep. His golden eyes followed every movement, every breath. He was too tired to snarl, too proud to plead, and too hurt to understand why this man did not act like the others had. No guns, no cages with steel bars, no shouting or force, just presence. The next day was much the same. Leon remained in the corner, muscles tense beneath his fur. As Emilio went about his routines, cleaning the water trough, checking the drip line for the acacia saplings, feeding the birds in the smaller pens, he didn't try to approach. He didn't try to coax Leon into eating. He simply was there. At noon, he returned with a thermos and a battered paperback novel. He sat in the same spot by the enclosure. He poured himself coffee, opened the book, and began to read aloud. Not to Leon. Not really, but not hiding it either. His voice was steady, quiet, the story simple, something about a traveler who forgot where he was going and kept walking anyway. Leon didn't move, didn't blink. But the next morning, the water in the bowl had less dust on its surface. A day after that, Emilio found it half empty. He said nothing, just refilled it. The meat remained untouched. So Emilio brought something else, a shallow bowl of broth, made from cooked bones and herbs. He placed it near the water, then backed away without a word. Leon sniffed it that night. But nothing more. On the fifth evening, Emilio sat beside the pen with a small radio humming faint music. Classical, old and slow. The kind that felt like the sound of the wind brushing through the tall grass. He didn't speak. Leon didn't eat. But as the sun sank, Leon rose to his feet. His legs were unsteady, the pain still sharp, but he walked 3 heavy steps toward the water. He drank. Then he turned his head, looked at Emilio, and lowered himself again. Not in surrender, in acknowledgement. The next morning, Emilio left the gate open a little longer while cleaning. Leon made no move to escape. He still didn't eat the meat. But when Emilio knelt near the fence, held out a cloth soaked in cool water, Leon didn't growl. He didn't even flinch. He simply looked. And then, very slowly, he reached his great head forward and pressed his tongue once, gently, to the man's outstretched hand. It wasn't affection. It wasn't trust. It was the beginning of permission. A few days later, Leon took his first bite of food. He didn't rush it. He didn't finish it all. But he ate. And when Emilio brought in fresh hay and set it down in the shaded corner of the pen, Leon dragged himself toward it without hesitation and lay there, eyes watching the open sky. Emilio didn't say thank you. Leon didn't ask for more. But in the small silences, something unspoken passed between them. There were no apologies, no demands, just quiet, consistent presence. One evening, as the orange dusk painted long shadows across the enclosure, Emilio dozed off in his chair with a book resting on his chest. Leon lay in the far corner, still awake. He watched the man sleep. For the first time in a long time, there was no fear in his eyes, only tiredness, and something very close to peace. Later that night, When the cold wind came whispering through the desert grass, Leon rose from the corner and lay down near the gate. Not out of need, but out of choice. The stars were scattered across the sky like dust on velvet. And in that still, breathless moment, two survivors rested within reach of one another, not healed, not whole, but sharing the same space, the same quiet, the same decision to stay. The mornings came cooler now, each one painted in softer gold, as if the sun itself was learning to be gentle again. Dew clung to the dry grass outside the recovery enclosure, and birds began to return, drawn by the stillness, or perhaps by the presence of something quietly healing within. Leon no longer stayed curled in the farthest corner. Each day, as Dr. Emilio approached with his bag and a calm nod, the lion would rise slowly, stretch his mending limbs, and move closer, not just out of necessity, but out of choice, out of recognition. Some mornings, Emilio would find him already waiting near the gate, eyes half closed in that dignified, watchful calm unique to old kings. He never growled when Emilio entered now. He didn't need to. There was no war between them. Just the daily rhythm of trust. Emilio knelt beside him as always, unwrapping old bandages and cleaning the wounds with warm water and crushed herbs. The gashes on Leon's shoulder and leg had begun to knit, dark pink beneath the remaining scabs. The infection receding. The lion's fur had started growing back around the old snare wound. Though it would never look the same. He would carry those scars forever. But he would carry them upright. Sometimes, while Emilio worked in silence, Leon would close his eyes, exhaling deeply. That sound, the breath of a beast who had chosen not to fear, was more comforting than any word. One afternoon, after wrapping the final gauze, Emilio leaned against the wall of the enclosure, resting his back on the warm stone. Leon, without a sound, approached him. The massive creature lowered himself down beside the man, their bodies separated by only a breath of space. Then, after a long pause, Leon shifted his head, slowly and deliberately, and laid it gently across Emilio's outstretched leg. Emilio froze, not out of fear, but out of awe. The weight of that head was heavy, but not burdensome. The warmth of it seeped through his worn trousers. He didn't move, didn't even reach to stroke the coarse mane. He only sat still, looking down at the rise and fall of the lion's flank, listening to the wind, and feeling, for the first time in a very long time, something settle inside his chest. Time passed. The sun dropped lower. The shadows lengthened. Leon's breathing slowed into sleep. Emilio, carefully, almost reverently, placed his hand on the lion's chest, just above the ribs where the fur was thinnest. Beneath it, the heartbeat thudded steady and strong. The rhythm of life clawed back from the edge. Emilio closed his eyes. "My grandson," he whispered, voice hoarse from dust and memory. Used to be terrified of lions. Wouldn't even look at a book if one was on the cover. Said they had teeth like nightmares. Leon didn't stir. But one day, Emilio continued, as if speaking to himself more than anyone. He asked why people called them kings. I told him I didn't know. I was angry then. I said it was probably just the way they hunted. The way they killed. He opened his eyes and looked down at the sleeping lion. I was wrong. The wind shifted gently. It's not the killing, he murmured. It's the strength to endure. To fall, and still stand. To trust, when everything in you says not to. That's why. His hand stayed where it was. The heartbeat beneath his palm continued. Unbothered, unmoved. But something in the air around them had changed. That evening, when Emilio rose to leave, Leon didn't lift his head. He only opened one eye, watched the man go, and exhaled slowly. The next morning, it was Emilio who arrived later than usual, delayed by a loose fence on the edge of the compound. When he stepped into the enclosure, Leon was already awake, sitting near the shaded wall, tail flicking slowly in the dust. Emilio knelt beside him as always. But this time, Leon shifted and leaned, not just close, but fully, his shoulder pressing into Emilio's side. A deep, heavy presence that spoke more than any word ever could. It was not just tolerance. It was closeness. It was the quiet agreement between two souls who had nothing left to prove to each other. No apologies. No explanations. Just presence. In the following days, their routine became something sacred. Emilio read in the mornings. Repaired fences in the afternoons. Sat with Leon as the sun fell. Sometimes he played old music again, soft, stringed melodies that echoed through the dusty compound like memories refusing to fade. Leon would lie near the gate then, paws crossed, head tilted toward the speaker. At night, when the stars rose sharp and bright, Leon often curled closer to Emilio's quarters, near the edge of the stone wall, where the ground held warmth. He never entered the house. Never needed to. The space between them had become something more than proximity. It was trust, hard-earned and silently shared. There was no ceremony, no grand transformation, just two lives, once hardened by pain, now breathing in rhythm beneath the same sky. And when Emilio sat outside one night, leaning back in his wooden chair, sipping tea with the sound of Leon's steady breath nearby, he whispered into the dark, "We're still here." He didn't expect an answer, and none came, but somewhere, beneath that velvet sky, two hearts beat, each one a little stronger for having found the other. The wind arrived before the dawn did, soft at first, brushing gently through the tall, sun-dried grasses along the fence line. It carried the scent of the open plains, dust and sage and the breath of something waiting. Above the horizon, the stars faded one by one, giving way to a pale blush that signaled the arrival of morning. Dr. Emilio stood in the cool light just outside the enclosure. His hands, though worn and weathered, moved with quiet precision as he unlatched the final gate. The lock clicked once, sharp and simple. The door swung open. The chain, never heavy, never cruel, but always present, dangled loose now from the steel post. Emilio held it gently, the length of it coiled in one hand like a memory being weighed. At its end stood Leon. The lion had healed. Not entirely, not completely. Some things never truly mend. But the wounds were closed. The limp had faded to a noble gait. His coat shone again in the morning sun, though streaked with white around the jaw and above his brow. He looked not young, but ageless, whole in a different way. He stood still as Emilio approached. The final chain clipped loosely to the leather band around his neck. It wasn't needed anymore, not really. It hadn't been for days. But the ritual of it, the moment, meant something. Neither of them spoke, not with words. Emilio knelt, one knee in the dirt, and slowly, without haste, unfastened the collar. It came free with a faint snap. The man rested it in the grass beside him and ran his hand one last time through the coarse mane that had become so familiar. His fingers paused at the scar near Leon's left ear, the first wound he had cleaned. He looked up, and Leon was looking back at him. The lion hadn't moved. The gate stood wide open. Beyond it, a gentle slope rolled into low grasslands, dotted with acacia and open sky. A place where no walls waited. A place where a lion could be wild again. But still, Leon did not step forward. He turned his head slightly, eyes locked with Emilio's. There was no fear in them, no hesitation, but neither was there urgency. It was not the look of a creature running from a cage. It was the look of someone who understood he had never truly been caged at all. Emilio felt the weight of the silence press into his chest. He stood slowly. They stared at each other, man and lion, predator and healer, two old souls worn down by different kinds of grief, now standing in the same light. For weeks, they had existed side by side, without language, without demand, only shared breath, pain, and patience. Now, the moment had come to part. Emilio's lips trembled, not with fear, not even sadness, just the depth of something too large to speak. His throat tightened, and without meaning to, his eyes welled. A single tear slipped down the side of his face, disappearing into his beard. He nodded once. A small gesture. Permission. Respect. Thanks. Leon blinked, slowly. Then he turned. He stepped through the gate. One paw after another, he moved onto the earth that had waited for him. His gait was smooth, silent. The grass barely rustled under his weight. He walked forward, not hurried, not drawn by instinct alone, but with purpose, with peace. And then, at the crest of the rise, he stopped. The wind blew stronger now, tugging at Emilio's coat, carrying away the last warmth of the night. Leon looked back, one final time. Their eyes met again. There was no growl, no roar, no grand farewell, just a glance. And in that glance, 1,000 unspoken things. Forgiveness, trust, gratitude. Leon's ears twitched. He gave a soft breath. Then he turned his head back toward the horizon and disappeared over the rise, his silhouette fading into the morning. Emilio stood alone. The chain lay at his feet. The gate swung gently in the wind. He wiped his eyes, once, then again. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stood there, as the wind passed through the fence. And the world beyond opened wide and quiet and waiting. And for the first time in years, Dr. Emilio smiled, not from joy, not from relief, but from the still, aching truth that sometimes Love is not about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. The desert knew silence. It stretched for miles, draped in gold by day and silver by night, broken only by the wind's low hum and the rustle of dry grass. At the edge of this solitude stood an old station, modest, sun-bleached, with cracked walls that had withstood storms and time alike. Inside, Dr. Emilio lived still. A year had passed since Leon walked away over the ridge, leaving an open gate and a gaping quiet that filled the station like an old friend returning. Emilio hadn't changed much in the eyes of others, still rose at dawn, still mixed herbs by hand, still patched up the wounds of whatever wandered into his care. But something inside him had shifted. He talked less now, even to himself. He sat longer in the evenings, books open in his lap but unread, eyes drifting toward the horizon as if waiting for something he couldn't name. He never put the collar away. It hung beside the door, polished by thumb and time, a silent reminder of what had been. The others had come and gone, injured foxes, falcons with broken wings, a limping jackal, but none of them stayed long, and none of them filled the space that Leon had left behind. Not that Emilio expected him to. He understood now. Some beings entered your life not to stay, but to change the shape of it forever. That understanding didn't make the nights easier. Especially nights like this one, clear, cloudless, the stars brighter than ever, the wind carrying the scent of grass and something more. Emilio sat outside in his old chair, hands resting in his lap. The desert was quiet, even the insects hushed. And then, he heard it. A roar, low, deep, powerful, but not threatening. It did not shake the ground. It stirred the heart. Emilio sat up, breath caught in his throat. The sound came again, drifting from the tree line that bordered the far side of the plain. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. He knew it instantly, the tone, the weight, the voice. Leon. Emilio rose, slowly, not out of fear or pain, but reverence. His steps were soft across the sandy soil as he made his way beyond the station walls, past the old water troughs, past the line of acacia that marked the edge of his world. The moon lit the plain in blue and silver, and there, standing at the edge of the trees, was Leon. He was bigger now, fuller. His mane had grown, darker at the edges, touched with white like frost. He looked strong, radiant beneath the starlight. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, half shrouded in the brush, were smaller forms. 3 cubs. 2 lingered near their mother, a sleek lioness Emilio didn't recognize, but one stood closer to Leon's side, mimicking his stance, his head lifted proudly though his legs still wobbled with youth. Leon took a single step forward. And then he roared again. It wasn't a call to arms. It wasn't a warning. It was a greeting, a memory, a thank you. Emilio's heart clenched. He took a step closer but stopped short. There was no need to bridge the distance. They had never needed closeness to understand each other. Leon looked at him, eyes clear and steady. They held none of the fear they once had, none of the pain, only calm, and something more, recognition. Then, with one final look, Leon turned. His tail swept low across the grass as he led his family back into the trees. One by one, the cubs followed, the lioness turning briefly to glance at Emilio before vanishing into the dark. And then they were gone. The plain grew quiet again. But it was not the same quiet. It pulsed with something new. Emilio stood there for a long time, unmoving, his breath visible in the cool air. He smiled, faintly, then the tears came, slow, unashamed. He wiped his cheek with the back of his hand, then chuckled through the wetness. "You've got a family now, Leon," he whispered to the stars. "You really did it." His voice cracked. "Thank you for giving me a reason to live a little longer." He turned back toward the station. The collar still hung by the door. But tonight, it didn't feel like a reminder of loss. It felt like a chapter closed with grace. And somewhere out in the vast, moonlit wild, the roar of a lion echoed, strong, steady, full of life, and Emilio knew he would never be alone again.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.